Hi everybody, it's Christy again. I'm sitting on my back porch on a crazy windy day. It's beautiful and it's warm out here, but the wind, it is some March winds. So, but I wanted to take a minute to talk about one of my favorite writers of all time. Today is Tuesday, March 25th, 2025, which means that it would be the 100th birthday of Flannery O'Connor had she lived. Fortunately, she died really young at 39 from lupus, which was hereditary in her family. And I can't imagine what type of literature we would have had she been able to live. But what she left us with was absolutely incredible. One of the greatest short story writers in all of American literary history. And I'm going to flash up a picture of me at her home place in Savannah, Georgia. Her childhood was in Savannah. The later part of her life in Milledgeville, Georgia. I haven't made it there yet, but I'm going to. She went to college, did some writer's things, and traveled some as a young woman, but most of her life was spent in Georgia. And because she grew up a regular person in Georgia, my girl gets me. She understands my people. She understands my language. She understands my faith. And those are the two major reasons I love her so much. One, she is overtly Christian. Her stories have an overtly Christian message. Now, when I say that, however, don't take this to mean sweet, ooey, gooey Christianity. No. My girl Flannery O'Connor took it upon herself to point out our hypocrisy, to point out our sins blatantly to us. She's just in our faces with some very memorable Gothic characters and Gothic settings to point out the ways we fail as believers. Secondly, she knows how we speak. She knows the life we live. Her characters are so real to me. I'm going to tell you a quick story about when I was an undergraduate and we were reading A Good Man Is Hard to Find, which is what I'm going to read from today. And we went into class and the professor said, well, what do you think about the grandmother? Now, for those of y'all don't know, the grandmother is a horrible person, but she was so real and relatable to me. I said, she reminds me of a whole lot of women in my life. And my professor stopped and he said, Christy, where do you come from? And that was a real moment in my life when I started to look at the culture in which I grew up and the way Christianity was presented to me. And you'll see why in just a minute. But the grandmother is completely identifiable. So if you're the type of believer who gets your feelings hurt real easy, Flannery O'Connor might be rough on you. But that's what I love about her. She makes me stop and think. Now, I am going to read from A Good Man Is Hard to Find for a couple of reasons. One, it's probably her most famous work. And two, it's probably the one most taught. It's the one I always started with my students. If I got to go to another one, there's some other ones I love. But it's a good entry point into Flannery O'Connor. So the irony, though, is that you find out in A Good Man Is Hard to Find that the Misfit, a horrible, heartless killer, understands the gospel better than the grandmother, who was a good Christian church-going woman her whole life. So, the Misfit and the grandmother are talking. And I'll start there. Jesus was the only one that ever raised the dead, the Misfit continued, and he shouldn't have done it. He thrown everything off balance. If he did what he said, then it's nothing for you to do but throw away everything and follow him. And if he didn't, then it's nothing for you to do but enjoy the few minutes you got left the best way you can, by killing somebody or burning down his house or doing some other meanness to him. No pleasure but meanness, he said, and his voice had become almost a snarl. Maybe he didn't raise the dead, the old lady mumbled, not knowing what she was saying and feeling so dizzy that she sank down in the ditch with her legs twisted under her. Okay, a couple things here. Notice, one, that the grandmother, when faced with her own mortality, is willing to deny the divinity of Jesus if it means saving her physical body. So you see why understanding that the grandmother was somebody that I knew in my church going history was enough to shake me up. How many of us are going through our lives acting? And when it comes down to saving our physical bodies, we would give up our spiritual ones. And two, notice that the misfit understands the importance of what it means to accept Jesus as divine, and what the alternative to that is. That's part of her irony that she shows. And Flannery O'Connor fully understands and points out to us how a lot of times Southern Christianity is as much cultural as it is spiritual. And I really think her goal is to get us to do some soul checking, and that's why I value what she has to say. But here's how this little segment ends with what the misfit says. I wasn't there, so I can't say he did it, the misfit said. Wish I had been there, he said, hitting the ground with his fist. It ain't right I wasn't there, because if I'd have been there, I would have known. Listen, lady, he said in a high voice, if I'd have been there, I would have known, and I wouldn't be like I am now. His voice seemed about to crack, and the grandmother's head cleared for an instant. Does she come to recognize grace there? It's a question we can debate. But what I want us to look at is that the misfit shows us is that the way we see Jesus, who we say he is and who we really believe he is, makes all the difference in the way we live our lives. And for those of you who've been brought up in church culture, it's worth thinking about. So happy birthday, Flannery O'Connor. Thank you for all that you've given us. May your words live on for at least 100 more years. Later, taters. Love you, bye.